All right, fellas. Well, today Uncle Li Ming is going to teach you a bit about basic firearm safety, as Aiden's request. All right. So, there are several rules of firearm safety, one of which I always forget, and the one I don't want to remember, I always do remember. We'll get to that in a minute. So, the first rule of gun safety, I'm going to say it's the first. I don't care if it actually is the first. No one needs to know what order they're in so long as they remember all three of them. And that is, keep the bang bang stick pointed away from anything you don't want to hit. Now, this is a very obvious one. It makes sense if you think about it or if you don't think about it. It makes sense. However, not everyone does it. So for example, if we're walking around and I'm doing sort of stuff like this, it's going to make you awfully uncomfortable, isn't it? So you don't do that stuff. Now, you're descending a hill in a line, right? You don't go forward like this. Why? Because your gun's pointed at the guy next to you. Relative of mine knows that from personal experience. This is generally a good direction, unless you're in a building with multiple floors and there are people above you and the floors aren't built well to withstand 7.62 by 39. Alrighty. So, essentially, don't point your gun at things that you don't want to shoot. Very simple. Up is, as I mentioned, generally a good direction. And there's different carries you can do. This isn't a video about carries. But the reason a lot of the carries are the way they are is for this reason. All right. So, what's another rule of gun safety? Oh yeah, there's a good one. Keep your finger off of the trigger until you're ready to fire. So, well, in the movies, you may have, this is for illustration purposes only, you may be used to seeing people running around with their hands like this. And if you're used to running around with Nerf guns, and that is your only experience with guns, again, I'm expecting that most of you here will know this, but Aiden wanted the video made, and for anyone who doesn't know, this is good. Basically, just keep your finger off of that trigger till you're pointing it down range and you're ready to shoot. Simple, very simple. Now, the lovely thing about the rules of firearms safety is you have to break more than one of them in order to actually do any damage. For example, if I have my finger on the trigger and I'm aimed right at you, well, that's a problem. But if you notice, I am now breaking 2 out of the however many, I haven't gotten to them all yet, rules of gun safety. All right, so if my finger's not on the trigger, I can point this at you. It'll make you awfully nervous if you got half a sense about you. But it's not actually going to do any harm unless something hits that trigger, which means it is ultimately, I shudder to say safe, but yes, safe. Now, if I've got my finger on the trigger, that isn't exactly a problem if I'm pointing the gun at things I don't want to shoot. Alrighty. The fourth rule of gun safety, which I don't consider to be a proper one considering it's part of the first one, don't aim at anything you don't want to hit, is know your target and what's beyond. Now, depending on which firearms course you went to, they will make you memorize that one. But considering that it is actually a part of the first one, it is not actually that necessary. Don't point the gun at anything you don't want to shoot. Kind of implies you know what the gun's pointing at. Otherwise, what's the point of that thing? All right, so depending on how I edited this, there may or may not be a pause there. That's because I was looking up the second rule of gun safety. Now, the funny thing is, I actually remembered it, but I thought there was no way that that could possibly be one of them. It was. The other rule of gun safety is keep the gun unloaded until it's ready to use. Now, yes, that is a good rule of gun safety. That's actually important, yeah. There was a reason I wasn't thinking of it. For example, this gun was currently loaded. Now, there was a reason for that. The reason that this gun was currently loaded is because I was out in the woods. Oh yeah, that's right, I should probably have this thing here. So, I'm going to go a bit further than gun safety. I'm going to give you some useful stuff. So, now, probably, I'd say the safest position for a gun to be in is, oh, I don't know, a field stripped and all, you know, disassembled and locked in a safe or something like that, right? I don't think there's any way it could possibly hurt anyone if it is field stripped and locked in a safe. But there's a reason that we don't just keep all our guns field stripped and locked in a safe. That would be absurd. We have to take them out and use them at some point. And there is always going to be a point at which they will be dangerous. And they rather have to be if they're ever going to be used. All right, so the thing then, oh, whoops. The thing then would be to decide what the best balance between safety and usability is. That's what I want to talk about now. So, keep your gun unloaded until it's ready to use. That's one of the rules of gun safety. Gloves. That's one of the rules of gun safety. But obviously you aren't going to keep your gun unloaded all the time. So, when I'm out in the woods, I generally bring a gun with me. And when I bring a gun with me, I have it at various stages of readiness. And, sorry Aiden, but what I just did right there, YouTube has decided that that's a big no-no now, and it could delete this video if it wants to. But, on to the topic. This is a loaded magazine, so I'm just not going to rack that charging handle. I will take the magazine out if ever I am going to need to. Yeah. So, when I'm out there, I like to keep only around 3 steps in between me and firing this gun. What do I mean by that? Well, let's start from practical stuff. This gun is currently about as ready as you would want it if you're going out into the woods just to start with. If you think you might need a gun, so you're going to bring your gun with you, right? So it is assembled, it has the magazine in, and the magazine is loaded. So we're cutting out, putting the gun together and loading the magazine because that's stupid. We don't need to deal with that here. All right, so if I were particularly jumpy, let's say I'm hunting a Wendigo, I could go around with the gun charged, ready to fire, shouldered, and with my finger on the trigger, right? So that is, I am about to shoot something. That is probably the least safe on this scale, right? And that's what you're going to do if you're ready for, I don't know, shooting a Wendigo or a bear or whatever it is you're going to shoot. If you think you are going to need your gun. What I like to do, if I'm, out in the woods and pitch dark and am mildly concerned about something jumping me in the middle of the night, what I will do is, for example, I will have the safety off, but I will not have a round in the chamber, right? So, how many actions does it take to go from this to firing? And actually, I'll usually be about here. I just walk around like this, and this is nice. It's nice and comfortable. Well, the first thing I have to do is charge the rifle. I'll just pull and release because there's a spring. I have to put my finger on the trigger and ready it. That's 3 steps, I think, if I counted right, between me and firing. Or, alternatively, I could keep the gun loaded and the safety on. So now there is, in theory, a round in the chamber, readied, it's charged, but the safety's on. So now what do I have to do? I have to flick the safety down, put my finger on the trigger and ready it. And that's what I have to do to shoot. Now, in order to be safe, you don't want it charged, safety off, finger on the trigger. You don't go around like that. That's wrong. It's dangerous. You want a few steps in between you and firing. Yeah. That's pretty much what I was going to say on that matter. So if you're, I don't know, on a night patrol or something like that, let's say you're wanting to be ready to fire the gun. You want to keep a few steps in between you and firing, so you can't just go letting rounds off by accident, but so that you can let them off quickly enough when you need to. Yeah. So that's about it for this video. Hope that, actually I hope that no one needed to, I hope this helped absolutely no one and that this was entirely useless. I hope that you were bored to death watching this video and knew everything I said. In the unfortunate case that you did not, I'm slightly worried. Good luck, you're going to need it. See you later.